This politically helps Trump because it helps him to paint the Democrats and Mamdani as extreme and thereby, in contrast, himself and his eccentric policies as the normal. But while this elevates Mamdani to a national role, a national profile, if you will, does it help him being seen as wrestling in the mud with the president, trolling the president? After all, Mamdani needs Trump and his federal funds as much as Trump needs a working relationship with a man who is at the helm of his hometown. US President Donald Trump watched the election of a man who he has dubbed as a dangerous communist as the mayor of New York City. For weeks now, President Trump and his allies have tried to disparage Zohran Mamdani as an extremist and a communist and a danger to New York City. But they were not able to stop the 34-year-old from becoming the first Muslim and first South Asian mayor of New York, and also one of the youngest mayors of New York City. And now, the two men, who are aged 34 and 78, appear to be headed for a showdown, pitting the young democratic socialist against a president who has already treated him as a bit of a useful foil. For Donald Trump, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is the face of the Democratic opposition. Just hours after Mamdani's improbable victory, the president said the Democrats were crazy. He painted Mamdani as the future leader of the Democratic Party, something which helps him position Mamdani as a useful idiot.
Then a guy comes along, ping, ping. These people are crazy. And Mamdani, whatever the hell his name is in New York, no. He thinks it's wonderful to have men playing in women's sports.
Trump's aides and allies acknowledged that Mamdani and New York City are likely to be the next targets of President Trump's attacks. But some also caution that Trump has a vested interest in New York's financial success because of his multiple real estate holdings in the city. The city underpins the Trump family business empire. And yet, President Trump has already threatened that he's going to withdraw federal money other than the very minimum that's required for New York City. Although legally, no president can hold back money which Congress has authorized to any state or city for that matter. When the administration has tried to withhold federal funds from cities over immigration or any other policy, it has consistently lost in court. Zohran Mamdani, for his part, also seems ready for that fight with Donald Trump. In his victory speech, he challenged Trump directly. He vowed to fight back against any federal effort that is made to meddle in New York's affairs. He even referred directly to Trump in his victory speech, asking him to turn the volume up.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Mamdani also said that he will not be cowed down by President Trump's threats and that New York City would actually become the playbook for how to defeat Trump and his MAGA political movement nationally. Mamdani, though, has very few levers to fight back against the Trump administration other than going to court. The mayor-elect has vowed to hire 200 additional lawyers to the city's legal department, partly to stand up to what he calls presidential excess. In his second term, President Trump has repeatedly shown his willingness, some would say even eagerness, to use the levers of the federal government to exact revenge on his opponents. He's already cut billions of dollars of federal grants to states and cities run by Democrats, including New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. He's also sent the National Guard to Democratic-run cities against their wishes. And he has instructed the Justice Department to prosecute his political opponents, including an Attorney General in New York. But there is a catch here. Mamdani's victory could prove useful to Trump. It could allow Trump to replicate a playbook that he has long deployed in order to demonize Democratic leaders. And the list of those Democrat leaders are long, from former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, even Hillary Clinton, who was the Democratic senator from New York and the presidential challenger in 2016, who Trump beat. He has painted all of these Democrats as loony and crazy and extremist, only to further his political agenda. Since Zohran Mamdani won this surprise victory in the Democratic primary back in June, Trump and his allies have tagged Mamdani as the future of the Democratic Party. He's used this to appeal to his MAGA base in Middle America in a bid to show that Trump is the normal and Mamdani is the deviant. And the first issue of the showdown between Trump and Mamdani has been on the rights of transgenders. Mamdani has promised to defend the rights of transgender New Yorkers and to make New York City a sanctuary city for LGBTQ residents. Trump, on the other hand, has already said that Mamdani wants to allow transgenders into women's sport. For Mamdani, he needs to be careful not to get into a trolling contest with Donald Trump. That may not be a particularly politically valuable thing to do, but he needs to also at the same time come across as standing firm against Trump where it is essential, where it is seen that Trump is waging a war against the city. So where necessary, he has to come across as standing up to the bully, but not get down into the mud and be seen as wrestling with the president. The question, though, is, and this is a balancing act, how do you, on the one hand, challenge President Trump and at the same time leave room for the idea that Mamdani is going to be a mayor for all New Yorkers, including those New Yorkers who are Trump supporters who did not vote for him. Trump, who's born and raised in New York, is deeply concerned about the affairs of the city and how it's run. His advisors have tried to meddle in the race to try and sink Mamdani's chances, but they were unsuccessful. Trump even gave a last-minute endorsement to Mamdani's challenger Andrew Cuomo, but even that could not stop him. Now, after the victory, some of the president's friends from New York are encouraging him to take a more diplomatic approach to the city and its new mayor. They've advised him not to hold back money that would help New York. They're also advising the president against sending the military into the city, like he's done in the past with Los Angeles, with Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Trump versus Mamdani could be the next big showdown in America, one whose ramifications will go well beyond the city that they both call home, New York. So leave aside, how Trump is positioning Mamdani and this future showdown, this future fight between Trump and Mamdani, which of course suits both their politics. But I want to talk a little bit about how Mamdani is viewed here in India, as well as, of course, in the Indian American community back in the US. It depends on who you speak to. I want to go across to Sadanand Dhume. He's a senior fellow with the American Enterprise Institute and also columnist with the Wall Street Journal. Thanks very much, Sadanand, for speaking with us. There's sort of this love-hate, if I can use that phrase, when it comes to Zohran Mamdani here in India, especially you scour social media. There are either people who say he's like this beacon of progressivism, he's talking about the right things, the right causes, etc. And then you have this nationalistic crowd, the crowd that's usually BJP supporters or Modi supporters who just can't stand the sight of him. How does one explain this?
Well, Zaka, we live in a time where politics is just so polarizing, right? And social media tends to exacerbate that. So it shouldn't be surprising that Zohran Mamdani is a polarizing figure. He's obviously a polarizing figure not only in India, but also in the United States, right? Again, in sort of similar terms, you have some people who see him as, this necessary corrective to U.S. politics, someone who's going to, bring in freshness and youth and energy and diversity and so on. And you have other people who view his ideas, including myself, and particularly his economic ideas, as backward, stale, tried, and almost certain to fail. I think in the Indian context is very interesting because what we have not seen before is a mainstream American politician who is so deeply interested in and in fact, quite knowledgeable about Indian politics, but also quite partisan. So it's a tricky thing for India to negotiate because this guy, first of all, he obviously has roots in India, even though he himself was born in Uganda. But he's also very clearly taken a side, right? And he has said very clearly that he is sympathetic with the India of the Congress Party, the India of Jawaharlal Nehru, and so on, which sets him up in a kind of on a collision course with Prime Minister Modi and the BJP. Personally, my own view is that in terms of diplomacy, it would be smart for India to reach out to him because already relations are quite bad with the MAGA side. And I think that it would not be very smart to have a very bad relationship with one of the most powerful voices on the American left as well. But I do think that Mamdani himself should also, needs to temper himself, right? Because now he's in office. It's an important office. And he needs to understand that Indian politics is very complex. And he can't have this cartoonish view of it like a sophomore in some college campus, and he has to be more responsible with his words, I hope, going ahead.
You look at the sort of arc of Indian American politicians, and I go back to people like Bobby Jindal, Nikki Haley, even Kamala Harris last year when she ran. Whether you were Republican or Democrat, if you were Indian American, you generally tended to sort of support the Indian American candidate. Again, here in India, whether you were a BJP supporter or a Congress supporter, you generally, an Indian American politician was always held up as, oh, here's an example of, an Indian going abroad and doing well, entrepreneurship or academics or in this case, politics. But in the case of Mamdani, that's not quite how it is. It's again, very starkly, as you said, deeply divided depending on who you speak to and what their political affiliations are. How is the Indian American community viewing Mamdani?
I think sort of similarly, right? I think you do have a great deal of support for him in the Indian American community. You saw many people, who were at his victory speech, for example. I think a lot of people have been, just touched by by a lot of the symbolism, right? People recognize Meera Nair. She's there, like with him in a sari. They're playing this Bollywood song to sort of close it all out. The fact that he's kind of, unapologetic about his cultural roots, I think a lot of people appreciate that, and they find, they find that welcome to people of all faiths quite heartwarming. There is a faction that doesn't like him, and I think that would probably be the people who are most closely associated, with the BJP and the politics of the BJP. And in fairness, it's that that cuts both ways. It's not as though they started out wanting to dislike him, but he himself has, over the years, long before he became a prominent figure, he's very clearly staked out a position in terms of Indian domestic politics. So, for example, if you go back years ago, he was tweeting about the CPM mayor of Trivandrum, of Thiruvananthapuram, and he's read out the letters of Omar Khalid. So he's there. He's a type, and he's a type that we recognize in India. We're just not used to having that guy in the mayor's mansion in New York City. And so he's obviously been he's obviously a polarizing figure among the Indian diaspora. Also, many people have take pride in him, but many people also can't stand him.
But the timing of it is also quite curious, I think, because what you said, unapologetic and unabashed about who he is, what his different identities are, at a time when just a few days ago we saw the Vice President of the United States, who's married to an Indian American, sort of denounce, if not denounce, but certainly say that he hopes that his wife, converts to Christianity at some point. And he got a lot of flack for it. And there is this rising sort of anti-Indian immigrant sentiment in the MAGA crowd. So at a time such as this, for an unapologetic, unabashed Muslim South Asian person to be elected mayor of New York, how does that square off?
I mean, you're absolutely right, Zach, but you have to keep one thing in mind, that the demographics of New York City are not the demographics of the United States. I think that, if Zoran Mamdani was trying to run for national office, or if he was trying to do what Vivek Ramaswamy is trying to do and run for, governor of Ohio, it'd be very different. I mean, New York is the most cosmopolitan city. It's the most multicultural city. It's the most religiously diverse city. So, it's a little bit like if someone runs for, student union of JNU, that's not really the same as running for office in Uttar Pradesh. Yeah. So I think it's kind of similar. So he has, all those things, the way you described him, it's all correct. But you have to understand that New York is a very particular petri dish that allows the politics of someone like Zoran Mamdani in a way that the rest of the country would not permit.
All right, Siddharth Dume, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Fascinating, covering and tracking this man and his incredible political journey. I mean, a year ago, nobody would have given him a chance to win this race, and now here he is in the mayor's mansion, or at least.
Thanks for having me, Zaka.
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. Thank you for joining us.